We will say it like it really is.
With dignity and respect.
Committed to free speech and common sense.
Upbeat and entertaining.
Straight talking and direct.
We may agitate each other and you.
Heartfelt and passionate. Thought-provoking, provocative and controversial.
Fearless and truthful.
Hello and welcome to The Pledge, the only place for straight-talking debate as we enter the era of President Trump. Theresa May is making sure the world takes notice of a newly independent Britain by appearing on the cover of American Vogue magazine. But Mrs May isn't the only leader who can bring a bit of glamour to the UK's image. We think Nick Ferrari is the perfect cover model to sell Britain abroad. Stylish, poised and keen to spread his tabloid right-wing views the world over. And he does look great in a pair of leather trousers. Now, on this week's show, we're joined for the first time by journalist and broadcaster Carole Malone, who's having a royal go at a certain someone. Rachel's also not best pleased, but she's unhappy with the Prime Minister. Nick's talking about helping kids get on in life and being his usual understanding, helpful self. And Afua says we're sitting on a toxic time bomb. But first, it's me. Now, all my life, I think we in Britain have been in awe of Americans, economically, culturally and politically. I always remember going to the States for the first time in the early 70s and being amazed by how rich even ordinary people seemed to be. There were big highways, big houses, big cars, even big fridges. The US was the centre of popular culture in terms of movies, television and even music. And politically, the US seemed so sophisticated and exciting. In short, Americans had a world-beating confidence and swagger, which through film and television and trips to the moon, intimidated the rest of the world. This led citizens of the United States to believe that everyone wanted to be an American. And it turned their presidents into something like royalty.
I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt,
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office
of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
Tomorrow, all that finally comes to an end, when a man who, in my opinion, is a racist, misogynist, pathological liar who doesn't even recognise when he's not telling the truth, becomes the 45th President of the United States. The oath of allegiance is no longer God bless America. It's now God save America.
Greg, you know I agree with you. I agree with your characterisation of Trump as a misogynist, racist, pathological liar, and it is worrying. And I have been on the Trumpocalypse wave of depression along with everybody else. This is a country that's been spiralling out of control, in my view, for a while. And even though Trump is bad news, I completely agree.
Yep.
I don't think he is the definitive end in the way that you've described it.
No, what I'm talking about is image, really, I suppose. That if you were of my generation, I mean, you believed America because of, largely, I suspect, because of movies and television and the rest of it, but you believed America was something special. It was something, it was very sexy. And when you went, you were surprised by just how affluent it was then. Now, actually, I don't think it is today when you go and compare it with Europe today. We've caught up, but back 40 years ago, it wasn't like that. So I do think there's always been this sort of image. Why did the British media cover American politics so intimately, where they don't cover French politics or German politics in anything like the same way?
Do you think Trump cares about global greatness? I don't think he does. I think he cares about America and its people. And I think, and if he delivers to Middle America what he promised, which was employment and jobs and to tackle immigration, he will be the greatest president of them ever, you know. And he says he will tackle jobs. Take a look at this.
I said that I will be the greatest jobs producer that God ever created. And I mean that. I'm going to work very hard on that.
Yeah, and we've been talking about Obama. You know, how great a president was he? Actually, yes, he looked the part, he sounded the part, but in truth, he was a very mediocre president. You touched on it before. We said in Syria, you know, his role in Syria, it was a red line for him. The Syrians bombing the insurgents. He said he would go in. He didn't. He left Iraq. He left a void in Iraq when he pulled out to fulfil an election pledge and chaos there. So how great a president was he? Looks good.
Sure, but I'm not getting into defending Obama. All I'm saying is the thing about Obama is he did look good. To the world, he looks like an intelligent, thoughtful, interesting man.
But he wasn't a great president.
All the things that Trump isn't.
Yeah.
And I think America is as shocked about electing Trump as the rest of the world will be. But I do think if he carries on as he is at the moment, and why keep picking fights with all sorts of people that you don't...
Because that's
why
his style.
pick a fight with Mrs. Vidal?
He doesn't look at politics like politicians do. He looks at it like a
Carole,
businessman.
this is... I mean, you've all made good points. Let's not post-mortem Obama. You know, Trump is going to be inaugurated on Friday. You say he's going to create jobs. Yeah, he's created a huge number of jobs for the Trump family so far as I can tell, and a number of billionaires. But looking at it geopolitically rather than culturally, Greg, he's bear-baiting China. He wants to see the collapse of Europe. He's putting America first. He wants to make America great again. Just at a time when we need Europe to be solid and we need the transatlantic alliance to persist in order for the West not to...
I think...
fall prey to Putin's imperial ambitions.
Right, well, let's just get a few things straight here. Greg Dyke, with your gutter tabloid journalism, we just make some corrections here. During the campaign, Trump responded to allegations he was a racist, saying he disavows any groups or individuals associated with a message of hate. As regards being a misogynist, he apologised for that video. And he says, anyone who knows me knows those words do not reflect who I am. So we've got that.
Well, I apologise for the video.
Let's move that. Your problem is simple, summed up in one word: democracy. You don't like the fact that by a perfectly accepted democratic system, America, US, has gone for the bloke you did not like. Get over it. Your bloke lost, he won, move on. I'm delighted. I am going to watch that inauguration, probably with a mixture of laughter and excitement, because I think the world... all we need is your brother in number 10, Trump at the White House, and Putin, and my God, I'll never be out of work. It would be fantastic.
It's nice for you, Nick. It's a bit dangerous for the rest of the planet.
But don't you think it's good that he's actually dumped all protocol? He's dumped all norms. We don't know what's coming. In a way, that's good for the rest of the world.
But he's actually ruling by tweet, and he's releasing things by tweet in the middle of the night. There is no accountability if he does not face the press.
He brought two huge companies back to America that were going to go to Mexico, and the jobs would have left America. He's brought them back, and goodness knows how many more he'll bring back.
That hideous, sanctimonious White House press corps who think that they are God's gift to journalism. By God, they're in for a tough time, and I will...
By the way, when I was in Washington, they wouldn't let my husband...
Whilst you're all celebrating the departure from protocol, let's look at the protocols he's departed from. Anti-nepotism, as you pointed out, Rachel, he's been appointing his son-in-law to negotiate the Middle East peace deal. These are not tokenistic roles. These are major...
OK, but look at the other people he's employed. Look at the other people he's employed. He looks at politics like a business. So he has employed the best deal makers in America to make deals, rather than
his new administration is called Mad Dog.
James
Mattis.
But hang on, you say he's looking at it as a businessman. I don't think he's at all.
He is. It's a completely transactional president. If they do right by him, he'll do right by them. That's what he's saying.
But I don't know any or very few businessmen who behave like Trump. I just don't. That's not the way business is done in almost anywhere. And I think somehow it's not about business. It's about, as I've said many times here before, he's the barroom bore. He's the man who's got an opinion on everything and thinks... And sadly, we've now made him the president... Or we didn't, but the American people... a minority of the American people have made him...
But it's middle America that have voted him in. The very people who've been ignored by all the previous presidents.
And those are the people he's going to disappoint. He's not going to open the coal mines of West Virginia,
No, he's not.
Is he? And he's promised them he is. And also, he's managed, in the course of only a few weeks, to insult Angela Merkel.
Good.
Yes.
Absolutely, that's another vote for him. Fantastic.
He's triggered Putin into claiming that Russian prostitutes are the best
Even
in the world.
It's sensational.
It's great copy, Nick, but it's scary living.
Just to respond to what you are accusing Greg of saying, which is that he doesn't believe in American democracy, to defend Greg, what I think you're saying is, yes, the American people voted for Trump. OK, not by an overall majority, but whatever, we respect the Electoral College. They voted for him, fine. I accept that and respect it.
Well, I'm very grateful.
But
I'm sure America now sleep quietly in its bed.
No, because like Rachel said, the people who voted for him hoping that this is going to turn around their prospects, their prosperity, are going to be disappointed because you don't succeed by isolating all your potential allies and trade partners, by insulting people on Twitter.
He hasn't even taken the job on yet.
Like, all right, we can watch the car crash in slow motion. In fact, we're going to be forced to. And just you know, from a cultural perspective, I mean, I think, Greg, I'm from a different generation to you. You know, I came of age politically when George W. Bush was in the White House.
Yeah. How is George Bush,
yeah,
by anyone?
He looks a liberal these days, doesn't he?
No, well, George Bush
to,
Sr.'s just been taken to hospital, hasn't he? But George W. Bush Jr., I mean, at the time, seemed like a complete basket case, you know. So it's not the first time that we've seen a president who has implications for the global perception of America's
also,
greatness.
Ronald Reagan. Do you remember when Ronald Reagan was elected? His own party didn't want him to be president. There was huge opposition. And they said he's a movie star who can't do anything. And look what he did. So now it's me. First time. Fingers crossed. So, is it just me who thinks Prince William is work-shy? A slacker who'll do anything other than knuckle down to the job he was born to do? Look, I'm a monarchist, at least I am when it comes to the Queen, Prince Philip and Princess Anne, because those guys work incredibly hard. But William doesn't. There's only one royal family he fits into, and it's not the one that lives in Buckingham Palace. It's this one, Jim and Barbara's, where the Cambridges would feel right at home watching telly in their crowns. The truth is, William does less than nearly every senior royal, except his wife, who doesn't do much either. And never mind all that nonsense about how he's a devoted dad who wants to spend every minute with his family, because every dad wants that. But the reason I'm cross with our idle prince this particular week is because we're told he's jacking in his part-time job as an air ambulance pilot to do, well, not very much. A source says he doesn't want to do too many royal engagements for fear of shoving his dad, Prince Charles, out of the royal limelight. So there you have it. Will's making excuses up front for the fact he won't be pulling his weight this year again.
Well, unlike you, I got to know
I knew you were going to say
the Prince fairly well because I was, you know, when I was chairman of the Football Association, and he's the president. And I have to say, my experience of him is totally different to yours. Or to the one you haven't had. My experience is
we don't all have the pleasure of meeting Roy.
No, my experience is that I thought he was an incredibly bright, intelligent, thoughtful guy.
Didn't say he wasn't.
And I also think our experience at the FA was any time we asked him to do anything, he did it. I mean, for instance, you remember that suddenly at the last minute, after the disasters in Paris, we were playing England playing
Which disaster?
France. Well, after the shootings in
the
Paris.
stadium.
England were playing France. We contacted the Prince and said, would you come and lead the whole process of saying, you know, we sympathise with you. He was there like that. He was like that the whole time.
That's football. And that's something he likes. That's a hobby. That's not a job.
It's not a hobby. It's not a hobby. Every time I saw him come once as a hobby when Aston Villa were in the semi-final of the Cup, and he got a box just to come and see Aston Villa. And then he came to the final, of course, and they lost 4-0.
This is football. This is not his job. This is a guy who was born to be king. Can I just read you out some of the royal engagements for last year? The Queen, 90 years old, 332. The Duke of Edinburgh, 95, 219 engagements. Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, 530. So how Will thinks he's ever going to overshadow Charles, God only knows. Duchess of Cambridge, 140. The Duke, 188. That's nothing. That's nothing. Nope. And also, let me just say, a guy called the Duke of Gloucester, who I've never heard of. Have you? He did 17 more than 17 jobs more than Will's, and you know, then the man.
But wait, Carole, that's one every other day, and then strip out weekends.
Necessarily. It's not. You can do 3 in a day. You can do 3 little visits in a day, 4 visits in a day.
He was working for the air ambulance a couple of days a week, and he's got 2 small children. What is the problem?
He's got 2 small. Everyone's got 2 small children.
There's nothing else you can accuse Prince William of apart from idleness.
Well, I can. Okay,
sure. I think you're looking at this the wrong way, Carole. I'm not a massive fan of the monarchy, as you probably know. I have to say, I respect the Queen because she works incredibly hard, and at her age, I think it's remarkable. But I think you're just looking at this the wrong way. I don't think the point of the royals is how hard they work or not, you know.
I do.
No, it's not. In fact, the last British Attitudes survey found that the royal family have increased their popularity to 74% of the population. And do you know why? William and Kate's wedding and the birth of 2 royal babies. Nothing to do with how many engagements they carry out. People like the royal family because of the point of the royal family, because of the fact of them. They're symbols, they attract tourists, they play a constitutional role, they're part of our British identity and nostalgia.
Kate's got great hair. Listen, I mean,
Kate has got great hair.
She might be about to be on stage
than anything William does.
But the other point is this. As families, they've got a difficult background, haven't they? Most of them divorced. He was determined that wasn't going to be the case. He was determined he was going to get to know his kids. He was going to bring them up properly. We all remember that picture of Prince Charles shaking, as a little boy shaking hands with his mother after she came back after 3 months. Terrible picture. What he wanted was to have a family and to bring up, make sure he was part of it. Now, that is today's man.
Okay, I get how you saying he should remain in uniform. No, in a way, I think it's a good look for him.
I get all of that. I get that this guy didn't have... We all had a choice about what we wanted to do in life. He didn't have a choice. He had to... So he lives life in a cage, but it's a gilded cage. And in exchange for going out to work, for glad-handing people, for making visits, for doing his charity work, he gets to live in mansions and palaces and has access to multi-millions.
So this is just fueled by jealousy?
It's not fueled by
it's totally
Of course it's not fueled by. But I'll tell you what, if
you've just laid yourself there.
This is a guy who never has to worry about how he's going to pay the mortgage, is he going to get made redundant.
But let's just ask, who'd swap your life for his? Because I wouldn't.
I would, in a nanosecond.
Well, you must have a pretty sad life.
Well, I probably have compared to him, yes.
I mean, would you?
Never.
Not in a million years.
But so you mentioned, this guy is 35. I think
you said it yourself. He was born to it. He can't escape his destiny.
I think he's been given a lot of leeway in his life.
Probably writing this sort of stuff. The whole chasing him. Well, you're part of it. You're part of that sort of tabloid.
Yes, I am.
You spent your life chasing him. You did, as same as you did to his parents.
I'm sorry, we were never allowed to chase
No,
women.
exactly.
That's the truth.
That's what you don't like about it.
So my point is, he's been allowed to live in
way that others
he's been allowed to live in relative privacy.
What's wrong with that?
Well, because he's supposed to be out there among the.
Why? Is the world going to come to an end?
He's not out there. He's out there 188 times.
Sorry, only this year, Carole, he went to Centre Point.
Yes,
and he also did an event for mental health with the Duchess of Cambridge.
I don't understand.
It's only, what is it? We're only in January. He is out and about, but he's doing things that mean something to him, and I think that matters.
I think he's
a modern royal. Give him some autonomy.
I thought he was going to modernise the royals, but I don't think he has, because I think what he's done, I think he's been living in Amner Hall in Sandringham for he wanted, you're right, he wanted to bring his kids up there, and that's why he became the air ambulance pilot, so he could be based there.
Do you know why he moved there? He's now moving back to London. Do you know why he moved there? He moved there when they started sending drones over Kensington Palace, and he started saying, how am I going to bring up my children with this degree of scrutiny by the media?
With the best will of the world, he's going to have to deal with it, because he has more privacy than the rest of the royal family, and he was born to do a job, and he's going to have to get used to it.
Why this venom for the prince?
It's not venom.
It is venom. You're angry with how much the sort of lifestyle he enjoys. You're angry with the fact that he doesn't seem. Do you actually think the people viewing now? Do you think the people viewing now? Oh dear, I think this country's doomed because Prince William only did 118 jobs with it. They're absolutely relaxed about it.
Well, all my times writing a column, people got very angry at the kind of lifestyle he was living and not putting very much back into it. People get angry at the money they have.
This is part of my problem with the royal family. I respect people who support the royal family. I think it's an important part of Britain's identity.
Parts of the royal family
but
are very
part
necessary.
of the problem, and the reason it's kind of incompatible with modern society, is that you have these people that are born into it, have no choice over their lives, who live in this cage, get hounded by the press, have no privacy, struggle to define their own destiny. It's completely incompatible with all of our ideas about meritocracy, about having freedom to choose in your life, about having a modern family, and we see it clashing over and over again. I don't blame Prince William for the choices he's making. I mean, I think that they're kind of messed up choices, and that's part of the problem of the whole design of the monarchy and why it doesn't fit in our age. But if you're a monarchist, Carole, which you said you are, you have to accept you can't have it both ways. That's how the monarchy is. That's how it works. It kind of doesn't make sense, and you just have to accept it.
Carole, do you think he actually had any choice whatsoever in giving up the air ambulance after his 2-year contract came to an end and deciding
he was offered a second contract and he said
I suspect, and I mean, if you've watched The Crown, you'll realise they're like pawns on a chessboard. They're moved around by somebody else, these royals, especially the younger ones.
That job was supposed to be a part-time job. It cost a lot of money to train him. It took almost 2 years for him to get operational. He's actually been doing it now for less than 18 months, and he's announcing he's jacking it in. All that money spent on that training for him, and he's walking away.
And he didn't want to pack it in.
He didn't want to
pack it in.
I'm sure Greg's right.
He loves flying helicopters. He didn't want to pack it in.
He doesn't do it very often.
He didn't want, because he got all sorts of other things, but he didn't want to, and the decision has been made, they'll move back to London where he can do more public events. And that's the point.
But if he loves it so much,
I'm
why
so
was he only
pleased.
putting in
I am so
80?
pleased that he found some time when his kids were little to be there and go, which a lot of us, I have to say, in life didn't do and regret as we get older.
Do you think if he suddenly did 350 jobs a year or whatever it might be, the public would say, oh, look at old William, he's a great bloke.
Well, they say that about... They say that about the Queen. She does 350-odd jobs a year. They say that about her. They say it about Princess Anne. They say it about Prince Charles. He did 500-odd this year. So, yes, they do say it about people that they think are valuable.
I didn't know how many jobs any of them did until you brought it up this week, and I had to look into it. I mean, I don't think the average person is tracking how many jobs they do. If they were doing none, I suppose it'd be noticed. But as long as they're doing their royal thing...
The average person does track how many jobs. There's a list made every year about how many jobs they do.
I think we all know now on the pledge you're not the average person. And so I'm going to bring this to a close.
Congratulate Carole.
Yes.
She's united four of us in a way I've never seen before.
I agreed with Nick.
Yes.
That's a good thing.
We've made it.
Queen Carole, thank you. So now, at long last, we know what Theresa May meant when she said Brexit means Brexit. She wants to take Britain out of the single market, which, for the record, I think is an act of national economic suicide. But anyway, moving on. She says she also wants tariff-free trade with Europe. And that's not the only example of May wanting to have her cake and eat it too.
We do not seek membership of the single market. Instead, we seek the greatest possible access to it. And because we will no longer be members of the single market, we will not be required to contribute huge sums to the EU budget. Fairer, more united, and more outward-looking than ever before. Brexit must mean control of the number of people who come to Britain from Europe. We want the EU to be a success, and we want its remaining member states to prosper. No deal for Britain is better than a bad deal for Britain.
Immediately after her speech, the EU's chief Brexit negotiator, Guy Verhofstadt, tweeted this: Britain has chosen a hard Brexit. May's clarity is welcome, but the days of UK cherry-picking and Europe à la carte are over. A nice line in food metaphors, Guy, and I have to say, I agree with him. Many of Theresa May's sentences began, I want, as if a bespoke deal for Britain is already on the table and simply ours for the taking. Cherries, cakes, whatever's on or off the menu, I'm afraid she's being too greedy. And the first aim of the EU is to make sure that Britain's worse off out than in. But hey, at least we know now. Brexit really does mean Brexit.
That's all very defeatist. You know, the thing that separates Leavers and Remainers for me, and you probably know that I'm a Leaver, is the Leavers are very optimistic, we're very hopeful, and we believe that Britain is great, we believe that anything we want to achieve, we can. Remainers, on the other hand, seem to think that Britain is this hopeless, weak little country that can't survive without the prop of the EU. And I don't believe it is for a second.
Can I just inject a note of reality? It's not just mere pessimism, it's also a bit of reality. Yesterday, what happened, Carole?
Yes.
HSBC.
Okay,
UBS,
they said, okay.
Goldman Sachs,
so
HSBC
said
they are moving thousands of jobs.
HSBC was 100 and something.
No. It was both thousands of jobs.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the new head of the EU...
Google headquarters, London. Snapchat headquarters, London. More Rolls-Royces being sold in Britain than ever before. Unemployment up. You're talking utter cobblers. Utter pessimistic cobblers. She's nailed you.
No, she hasn't nailed me whatsoever.
Utter cobblers.
All she said is that Leavers are pessimists.
IMF.
Britain was a battered wife.
So look
Rubbish.
at the fact. IMF has revised its growth forecast from 1.7 to 1.8. It's actually predicted that we will be the fastest growing country in the G7 this time next year.
Carole,
that's all good news.
The WTO, if we leave under a hard Brexit, no deal, our GDP is forecast to fall 7.5%.
And if we did go to World Trade Organization rules, what's going to happen is Europe is going to have to pay bigger tariffs to export to us than we will have to them. So they don't want to do that. You know, the thing is, the single market is a closed shop. It's discriminatory. Why do we want to stay in a club?
Hold on. Carole, I refer you to what I said earlier. Theresa May wants complete frictionless, costless access to the free market, the single market.
No, she doesn't want us to be in it.
I think she wants everything, but not having to pay for it. I'm afraid, as Muscat, who is the new Maltese head of Europe, has said, Whatever happens, Britain has got to be poorer than before.
When you start a divorce, you go for everything. You go for the house, you go for the art collection, you go for the wine cellar, you go for the country house, you go...
Did you get any of them?
I got none of them. None of them. I'm still trying. And then the reality of the deal goes through. That is what I say.
I think it's so unfair to characterise Remainers as pessimistic. I'm positive. I'm positive that we're completely screwing this up. No. You know, and no, seriously, it's ridiculous to say because we said that this was a bad idea and it's turning out to be a bad idea that we're all pessimistic.
Who says it's turning out to be a bad idea? It hasn't even happened yet.
You know, I have to say, when I listened to Theresa May's speech this week, I actually thought that does sound quite good.
She did.
It did sound quite good. And then I realised what a load of nonsense it was.
What was
nonsense about fantasy.
Tell me what
because
it was a letter to Father Christmas. It's I want.
She said no. She was quite clear.
Whatever she wants is going to be irrelevant, Carole. It's going to be whether the 27 other former partners actually want to deliver it.
Part of the mistake that
she has said we will go it alone. If they won't give us the deal, as she said, no deal is better than a bad deal.
Part of the mistake that you're making is characterising this as... Just let me... Sorry, Greg, quickly. Is characterising this as the EU punishing us. You know, it's not about punishment. It's about negotiation. No. If you don't let somebody leave and have a better deal afterwards, because if you're negotiating after your own interests, which any sensible negotiator would do, you've got to look at your own member states. If you send a message that leaving leaves you better off, the whole thing falls apart.
That's exactly.
And by the way, that's the thing that we're planning to benefit from when we're outside it, right? So it's not even in our interest if the rest of the EU falls apart. There's no way that they are going to let us have all the things we want without any of the costs. And it wouldn't make any sense if they did, and that's not being vindictive, that's just negotiating.
As a Remainer, I was quite... Oddly, I found it quite a positive speech. I thought she delivered it well, and it was quite a good speech.
No, I'll give you that.
It was a good speech. I think what you'll get at the end of the day is half of what she wants in there she won't get. And at the end of the day, we will have a vote in Parliament on whether or not she's got a lot. Now, if in the end she has to take the no deal, I think Parliament will vote it down. I genuinely do. And if Parliament votes it down, we then have another referendum.
But can I add something before we have the Brexit alliance responding to that? We've got that coming up. We've got on Tuesday. We're going to find out about whether Article 50 can be. We know the result of that. But also, it's been, I think, by my calculation, about 8 months since June the 23rd, and since Liam Fox was made trade. So what basically is happening is we're leaving our 27 former exes behind. And we went on Tinder in June, let's say June the 24th.
Swipe right.
How many countries have swiped right to sleep with us since we're rejecting
Liam Fox.
12.
Liam Fox 12.
That's amazing.
Well, that's a start.
Nothing.
That's fantastic.
I think it's nothing.
That's fantastic.
Why would they screw us up? You know, the EU...
We've opened our legs to the rest of the world. Nothing's happened.
What an interesting analogy.
Screw us up, Carole.
Seriously, the single market, we get... They export us 290 billion quid's worth of goods every year. They're not going to mess with that. They're not going to screw that up. Why would they? It does them more damage than it does us.
Hang on. It depends where those exports are coming from. They come from certain countries, not others. It requires 27 people to agree.
And that's the problem with it.
And you won't get. And I think almost certainly you'll end this thing on the set of what she said in that speech, which is Brexit will mean Brexit, and we will therefore not have a deal, and we'll just go on the World Trade Organization rules. Now at that stage, I think Parliament will do what it's there for to do, to say, no, that's not good enough.
I don't think they dare say no, because what they'll be doing if they say no is voting down the will of the people. That's why it went through.
Who said anything about leaving the single market or the customs union? Who voted? Who when they voted on the ballot sheet said that that's what they were voting for? Exactly. So you can't say what the will of the people is, because you don't know.
Afua, you're wrong. We knew we were going to leave the single market.
It was up for debate.
We obviously knew.
It never was up for debate.
You watch this. I mean, the Liberal Party, who are going to be the only party I think have got a coherent Remain structure, because I think the Labour Party's all over the place. But the Liberal Party is basically saying, look, we want a second referendum on the terms.
But we've had one. Because they didn't like the first result.
Because we didn't know the terms. We didn't know the terms.
It doesn't matter.
It was a ridiculous referendum done because of the inner politics of the Conservative Party.
If the result had gone the other way and there was a 4% difference the other way, that we would be having all these discussions. Because you know what would happen?
Mr Farage said
all leavers would be shouted down as racists and Lincolners and bigots, and they wouldn't be listening.
Go back and see Mr Farage. Mr Farage made it very clear that if the vote was as close as 48-52, he would continue the fight.
How can Mrs May, Afua, negotiate if she thinks every time she comes back with a deal it's going to have to be a referendum? It's impossible.
Just let's say parliamentary.
I think
OK, so... No, you want a referendum?
No, I think we need some clarification on what people voted for.
You didn't say
it was a bad question in the referendum because...
Yes, I do.
Because people...
You want another referendum?
No, I say at the end of the day, I would run a referendum on the basis of the deal, and if people then say, yes, we agree, that's the right deal...
What if they say no?
What if they say no? We go back.
How many times?
No,
can you imagine where you're negotiating? I mean, you're, as they're probably laughing already, we're just...
This is going to be fine.
I mean, there are children as yet unborn, and we'll still be probably debating as yet unborn.
Let the
double the length of World War II.
Let the unborn children continue the argument, guys. Let the unborn children take it over.
Double the length of World War II.
It's me next. I'm after the break with a warning about the crisis that, unlike this lot, nobody is talking about. We are facing a crisis, but I'm not talking about the NHS or Brexit. I've been speaking to people in our prison services, and we are sitting on a toxic time bomb of understaffing, under-resourcing and overcrowding. Inmates are sinking under a growing wave of violence, rampant drug abuse and mental illness. I've seen the effects firsthand, and the figures prove it. 2016 had the highest number of prison suicides on record. Prison violence is at an all-time high, with recent riots in Birmingham, where these pictures are from, and also Bedford and Lewis. There are 8,000 fewer prison officers than 7 years ago, creating a recruitment and retention crisis that exacerbates already terrible conditions. Only the most barbaric could think it wise to allow such medieval conditions. It was Winston Churchill who said that the stored-up strength of a nation is how it treats its prisoners. If that's the case, then right now, things are looking pretty bleak for ours.
Afua, what is the purpose of prison?
The purpose of prison is twofold: punishment and rehabilitation.
Can everyone be rehabilitated?
Everyone should have the attempts to rehabilitate them.
People such as Ian Huntley?
Can I put a question to you?
Well, it's a classic trick that you can't answer a question.
I think it's unfair to use Ian Huntley as an example because the average prison sentence is 9 months. The average prisoner is not Ian Brady or Ian Huntley. It's somebody who's committed a drug-related and often non-violent offence who gets a short sentence. So we can talk about the extremes, people who I don't think should or will ever be released, and I would agree with you on that. But you can't talk about the condition of the majority of prisoners by taking the most extreme examples of people who, by the way, we're not facing any prospect that they will be released, and no one's arguing for it.
But what I'm drilling down to is why prisons are put on earth. And I would suggest that the prisons are put on earth to, in most instances, to protect us, the people who are outside the jail, from people who need to be in the jail, to punish people who have chosen to break the laws, and where possible, rehabilitation, where possible.
I agree.
But that's a bit frightening. But the idea that necessarily we can rehabilitate all is, I think, a little bit far-fetched.
I'm not saying we should expect necessarily to
walk me through how the rehabilitation system will work. Who qualifies and who doesn't?
At the moment, it's almost impossible to rehabilitate, not because it's not the idea, but just because of the resource issues. So we have a situation, if we talk about victims, because I think we share that concern, as you said, people outside the prisons, we deserve to be safe. The reoffending rate at the moment is 45%. Our prisons are failing us, people who do not want to be victims of crime, because we have potentially dangerous people captive. We have the ability to train them to prevent them reoffending. People who are going to be released.
Dangerous people out?
We have people in prison who are going to be released. Do you accept that?
Of course.
Right. When we're releasing them, 45% of them are reoffending. That is not in any of our interests.
You're talking about the criminals like they're the victims. One of your phrases before, you said they're sinking under a wave of violence. You know, to be honest, I don't care about murderers and rapists and paedophiles. I don't care what happens to them. Lock them up for as long as you possibly can for me. What I care about is the people they've hurt. And, you know, we live in a society now where the criminal justice system is biased towards the perpetrators of crime and not the victims of crime. You know, there are lots of organisations...
What's your evidence for saying that, Carole? On what basis do you say
the government advisor 2 years ago said exactly that. She said that there were the poor relations.
What's a senior government advisor?
Well,
tell me that. That could be you.
You want the name?
I mean, no,
Have we sung that relations. There are lots of state-run help for criminals. There's not much state-run help for victims. And can you imagine what it must be like if you're a member of a family and someone has murdered your child or raped your daughter, and you find that the guy who's done it is living in a jail where he's getting drugs sent in, he's ordering stuff on Amazon, he's got access to computers, he's making Skype phone calls to his family.
I mean, I've been in quite a lot of prisons. I always remember going to the first one to make a film and just being absolutely shocked by how awful the experience was. And if we can... I mean, and in those days, this was 20, 30 years ago, and I remember people saying, if you get to 40,000 people in prison in this country, we won't cope. Well, we're now at 85,000 or something, and we haven't really built any more prisons. Now, it's like all things in society, you've got to take choices. You either got to do something about the prisons, or you've got to do something about the numbers that are going in there. And, of course, the other thing you discover is probably half are drugs-related.
Yeah.
And we've clearly... which we can discuss on another occasion, we've clearly followed the wrong drugs policy for years in this country. And because of it, drugs are dominating the prisons. But at some stage, we can't just keep putting more and more people in without doing something about the buildings.
So let's build more prisons and let's get more security guards.
Come on, Carole. We've got double... The prison population has doubled in...
But, you know, these guys make a choice to reoffend when they go. You know, when they're in prison, they have access to rehab.
People in prison, and we don't have enough staff to
so
look after the
so where should murderers go, Rachel? Where should rapists go? Where should paedophiles go?
No, but we are putting the wrong sorts of... For example, women who don't pay their TV licenses are serving short prison services.
There's about 4,000 women in prison all over Britain. There's not that many.
Incredibly careful about putting women in prison, because we already know what happens to their families, and their children go to foster care, and then the children offend, and it's an absolute hiding to nothing.
I saw some interesting statistics that says, this isn't exact figures, but something like 15% of the kids of lawyers become lawyers, 20% of the kids of journalists become journalists, 60% of the sons of prisoners become prisoners.
Yeah.
And that's the real problem. And it's all about it's working with them, their families, and all the things that you've got to do.
Massive amounts of money are spent on rehabilitation, and it's not...
No, massive amount of money isn't spent on rehabilitation. No, it's not.
There are financial and support programmes for when they come out. They have trauma services, they have mental health services.
Have you been inside a prison, Carole?
No.
Right, I've been inside a number of prisons. The last prison I went inside, the governor showed me the education wing, where they had money to build an education wing to help rehabilitation, which they've been forced to use to build extra cells. Okay. Those prisons are overcrowded by the prison service's own guidelines about how many prisons they should be in cells. Prisoners are in their cells 23 hours out of 24. Okay. Now, it's not because I think that we should treat prisoners like royalty and that they should be sitting around ordering things on Amazon. Well, Chris Grayling actually removed things like the right to bring books into prison, and Michael Gove reversed that, recognising
can we just
damaging us. And just finally, why do you always talk about rapists, paedophiles and murderers?
Because
the majority of people in prison
you have to do something really bad these days to get put in prison, but just have a look.
Party time! Party time! Get this one as well. Oh my goodness. Stand by the window, man. Stand up, you gotta stand up. Yo, stand up. Go like a bomb. Put your lips to it. That's it, he done it, soldier.
So when you talk to me about prison being really hard and really difficult and really awful, that's not that awful. He's shouting party time.
If you think I'm celebrating people having access to drugs in prison,
do you think
you couldn't be more wrong.
I'm saying, why have they got drugs?
Because we have a prison officer recruitment and retention crisis. We have understaffing, overcrowding. And if you're sitting in a cell for 23 hours out of 24, do you think you're finding constructive things to do with your time? No. You're getting involved in violence, which has risen 30%.
We just got to get a couple of points out, if I can just interrupt. Just so the prison service have said the challenges in our prisons are long-standing and won't be solved overnight, but the Justice Secretary is committed to making sure our prisons are stable. The Justice Secretary on the subject of violence says this is unacceptable, and I'm clear that safety in prisons is fundamental to the proper functioning of our justice system. And I think somebody might have said that half of people inside are for drugs convictions. I'm told that's actually 15%. So just come back to you, Greg. You said, I mean, I find this fascinating.
No, I didn't say drugs convictions, I said drugs.
Drugs.
You've got it, they're drugs related.
Drugs
related. I mean, lots of people are in there for conviction for stealing and all the rest of it to get money for drugs.
OK. What I find fascinating is you said, and that was a shocking statistic, 60%. So you said we should be working with those prisoners, right?
Yes.
Some sort of programmes. So let me get this straight. So the viewers watching this now, who are law-abiding citizens, who are struggling for their sons and daughters to actually get a leg up, we won't do anything for. But if you're a prisoner, We will have a programme that will come out. We will spend money on you because you've chosen to break the law. Just explain to me how that works.
You can't say that with a straight face, like it's an either-or.
Like,
you're
the person
you're the
person who sits here every week not wanting to spend any money on anything because you don't want to put taxes up.
You're dead right. I'll bring it
back. No, the real point is, in the end, we've got to look and say, look, society needs protection from some of these people. You've got to look at then what's the relationship with their children, and how do you do something about that. And there's no point saying, well, it would be terrible to spend money on that. Actually, if that makes it a safer society, that's what you've got to do.
But, you know, if prison is so awful, how come that within a year of being released, 2,000 serious offences, and by serious we mean murder, we mean rape, serious offences are committed by people who have been put away, and they do that in their first year when they get out. If prison is so bad, why are they so keen to go back?
Carole, panel, we must take a jail break. I'm up next. I'm talking about job interviews and telling you why I wouldn't hire any of you. To an idea so mind-numbingly inane, if it were a person, it would be the love child of Greg and Afua. Amid the flurry of Brexit coverage, few of you might have noticed an idea from a panel of MPs suggesting bosses should give jobs to applicants from poorer backgrounds, ahead of rivals who are potentially better qualified. Yes, that's right, you should knowingly hire an inferior candidate. And these hopeless Herbert MPs, most of whom have never run a company in their lives and would struggle to even run a bath, even said it should apply to medicine. So, a question. Would you want to be operated on by an inferior surgeon? Nope. Me neither.
Nick, you're being deliberately obtuse and inflammatory.
In what way?
You're using the word
I've never been accused of that before in my life.
Nobody is suggesting that employers take worse candidates for equal positions. What they're saying is they cast the net a bit wider, aren't they? And so that, just let me give you one statistic.
Go ahead.
5% of children on free school meals got 5 GCSE A grades. Right. At my school, it was something like 99% of children got 7 A stars or 9 A stars at least in their GCSEs.
Right.
The truth is, if you have a privileged education and background, you are going... The glittering prizes are going to be handed out to you in an awards ceremony. The rest, on free school meals, don't even know is taking place.
Well, I spoke to the chairman of the all-party parliamentary group on social mobility on my radio show, and he actually, I'm afraid, not for the first time in your career, you've got it completely wrong. They are specifically saying, and even in medicine, that there should be people, if they are from... And by the way, when I said...
They're using the word inferior.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you read me out that quote?
I will in a second, if you like.
Yes, I do like.
When I asked how you judge, this was fantastic, you go by postcodes. Now, I don't know if you've ever run a business. I know he's run a business. I'm not sure whether you guys have ever run businesses. It's bloody difficult running businesses, right? And the idea you would sacrifice part of your business... All I've ever done is run newsrooms, right? Hiring reporters or producers in television. The idea that I've got somebody who I really, really like, called Fred, but I'm going to have to hire Frank because he came from the back end of Harleston.
It's
absolute. It is. That's what this report is calling for.
What you're talking about is contextual recruitment, which, by the way, works. Contextual recruitment...
Remind me how many businesses you've run.
I have run a business, actually.
How many people have you hired?
By the way.
It was a very small business. I'll put it out there. No, I had one employee. Contextual recruitment is not about choosing inferior candidates.
Oh.
It's recognising...
I want you to find the word inferior in any quote.
It is recognising that somebody, like Rachel said, who goes to an elite school and gets straight A's is not necessarily a more talented or hard-working candidate than somebody who goes to a failing school and gets all B's. The amount of discipline and focus and talent it takes to perform that well in a school where no one does that well shows that they are not inferior, and it's recognising that talent actually comes in more than one model, and that is what...
Should we be doing more about whatever those statistics were that Rachel was quoting that bored us all to death about 5 GCSEs or whatever it was? Yes, of course we should be doing. But when it says that they should actually be hired ahead of rivals who are better qualified.
Is that the Daily Mail?
Is
that the Daily Mail?
Yes.
Of course that's what the Daily Mail is. Yes. Nick,
so you know better than paper that sells
what you're overlooking.
Millions.
Sorry, Rachel.
I don't think selling millions, but I'm sure Hitler sold a lot of papers.
Oh.
Didn't
as soon as you mention Hitler, you've lost the argument, Greg.
You didn't know that.
Certainly here, especially today, yes.
What you're
This is
overlooking...
dangerous social engineering.
No, it's not.
That's what people who never are interested in social mobility always say, Carole.
No, it's not. What about helping people to get into high-powered jobs that they may not be capable of doing?
Yeah.
How stressful is that going to be for them if they get a job? And they were catapulted over the really smart
you
person.
would prefer not to give anybody who hasn't had any privilege as a child.
No, I said you should be qualified to do the job.
I've got something to show you. I'll tell you what dangerous social engineering is. Dangerous social engineering is when 7% of the population, which is the percentage of population that's privately educated, gets 74% of the jobs in the senior judiciary, which is the current situation in the High Court and the Appeal Court, 50% of the jobs in print journalism, and a third of the jobs in the FTSE 100. That is social engineering. And what we've got is we have had affirmative action in favour of private school-educated, white, middle-class people. We've had that for time immemorial. All that this report is talking about is levelling the playing field, not unfairly promoting people
Let's talk
who
about
are
working-class kids. You're not a working-class kid, are you?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, well, I am. And what I noticed about my life as a child, and I went to secondary school, I failed my 11+, what I noticed about the people in my class was the ones who wanted to get on and do things, the ones who wanted to get out of where they were, they all did it. And it wasn't because they got 6 A's or 7 A's, it was because they had determination, they had ambition, they had gumption, and they got out and they went and did what they had to do. So it's not just about exam results, it's not about what you do.
No, but there is evidence from universities that kids coming in with lesser qualifications from not good schools actually do better than kids coming from Eton, right? That is amount. Now, how you then take that into the jobs market, I agree with you, is more difficult. But certainly in terms of education, the universities are under a lot of pressure to get more people from different backgrounds. Universities need to start saying, well, three A levels from there is actually
just as good as,
or if not better than 3 A levels from Eton or somewhere, because actually they've had a more privileged education, and that seems to me. Now, then you come to the same.
You're not punishing them. You're punishing clever people.
No, hang on, they're not clever. There's no evidence that they're clever.
I didn't say that.
More fortune.
You're stigmatising people who do not have the life chances of the elite.
And should we start taking a system that goes the other way and says, actually, we're going to find people who don't come from particularly good backgrounds, have difficult backgrounds, or haven't not had good education, and we're going to favour them? Well, why not?
I'm surprised at you, Nick, because you're often claiming to be, the voice of the real British person outside the London metropolitan elite. Well, this report is also talking about...
He's never knowingly left London.
He did do quite well on the map last time.
Except to go to his second house in France.
This report is talking about looking outside the London bubble for recruitment. It's talking about ending unpaid internships, which blatantly discriminate in favour of privileged people.
Don't know about that. I like the idea of internships. Who can afford to live in London and work for free if they haven't got money? They can get the bus fares. I agree with going. But what I don't say, and I'm glad Carole has supported this, is that kids like that who have I'm going to use the word the gumption. That's fantastic. You can't give jobs if you're a boss to someone who's not as good. Greg will have given out more jobs than I have. I can't believe he ever thought, tell you what, I'm going to employ him or her, because he's actually not as good.
It's about how you recognise what is good.
I have always deliberately looked for people who come from interesting backgrounds.
Exactly.
Always.
So you wouldn't judge on exam results?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily give them the job just because they got the right A levels and come from me.
If some kid from a working class background came to us hardly any qualifications, and their character and their personality and their drive impressed you more than somebody with a whole stronger, that's the person you give the job.
That's exactly what the report's recommending, Carole. So you agree with it, basically.
The person who's better doesn't get the job because
it's about recognising talent might not come in one model.
When I was Chancellor of the University of York, which I was for 11 years, I remember talking to the guy who ran the law department, and he said every year he takes in a couple of people who haven't got the same qualifications, but from more different backgrounds. And I said, what happens? And he said, actually, they do just as well, if not better. But they still find it harder to get jobs at the end of it. And that's because we have an inbuilt system. The legal profession now is panicking because it knows it's got to do something about those figures you showed. They've got to do something. They can't just have people of a certain background coming in their millions, which is what's happening.
Yeah, I think it's right. I mean, it's not so much contextual recruitment, but at the end of the day, when they've finished their the education, it's about contacts more than contextual recruitment, whatever it's called.
And that is true.
Yeah.
Middle-class kids do have the best contacts. You go to university and you're middle class, you already know
and
a
we
whole bunch
have,
of people.
as a country, the lowest social mobility in the OECD. So I think there is a job
says a woman
to
who
be
could bring
done.
2 cabinet ministers.
Yeah,
like
how
that.
do you think?
I mean, how do you struggle? You do struggle. Honestly, you're such a model to us all.
I would be nowhere
managed to
without
get
my
through.
contacts, Nick, and
nice.
I'm the first to admit
I think
it.
she is a model to us all because actually she came from that background and yet is prepared to argue
I've
something
overcome the
different,
disadvantages of my Johnson.
Unlike you, who've just used whatever you could and just got on.
Yeah,
Bring
just
the ladder up behind you.
Claw my way through, Greg.
There's been a lot of talking this week, but how much of it has been really straight talking? On last week's show, Nick awarded our new Straight Talker of the Week award to Donald Trump. Thank goodness I was on the ski slopes. So this week, I've decided to award it to Ivanka Magic from Brighton. When the commander-in-tweet took out his iPhone and retweeted this message praising his daughter, he failed to notice it was tagged to the wrong Ivanka. And Ivanka Magic wasted no time in putting the president-elect in his place. And you're a man with great responsibilities, she tweeted back. May I suggest more care on Twitter and more time learning about climate change? Well said, Ivanka, and a thoroughly deserving winner. Don't you agree, panel?
Well, let me just... Although I'm a big Trump fan, can I just get this absolutely right? This, as of the inauguration, is the man who's responsible for the nuclear codes, and he can't actually direct a tweet to the right person.
To his own daughter. He must be following her feed for ages. In fact, I sort of wish it was Ivanka Magic who was going to be running Washington, not Ivanka Trump, I have to say.
Although I have to say, because you said she's kind of quite liberal or even left-wing, I mean, I thought that was quite a restrained response from someone who's a Trump critic.
Did he go back to her?
I would have gone way further.
She described herself as a socialist from Brighton, I think.
Oh, I mean, it doesn't get more left-wing than that.
Right, that's it from us this week.
Wait and watch.
Let us know who you'd like to see win Straight Talk of the Week by tweeting us with your suggestions. Nick's off to blow up balloons for the inauguration. Yes. Greg's going to sit in a dark room all weekend. See you next time.